Look at the parents if you want to know what your spouse will look like in 20 years. This idea was the basis of many sitcom episodes and probably ended some relationships. But I've met many people who were overweight and their parents were thin. We've been told for years that weight is genetic. And I'm going to show you how they are keeping us in the dark about the true cause of obesity. I think we need to start with a very important piece of information that hasn't actually been disputed. Every single person on the planet shares 99.9% of their DNA. That means that all the variation that we see between us needs to be explained by that 0.1%. That seems like really hard to do. And when I first heard that, I didn't think it was possible, but then I started to think, well, maybe it's possible because, there's 23 chromosomes and those 23 pairs can make 8,324,608 combinations. And so 0.01% of that is actually 8,325. We're going to round up because we don't make half people, right? So although there are so many studies that identify the genes that are implicated in obesity, and if we look at that variation, we could say, okay, with all the genes we've identified and that variation, surely we can account for all the people. It still doesn't explain a few things in my mind. It doesn't explain why obesity keeps rising. If this is something that's to do with our genes and our history and it still doesn't explain why, if both my parents are obese and I come from a long history of obese people, why I could come out and be thin. So these things, they started to mess around with my mind. And I thought, well, I have to check on this more. But before I even go there, I'm going to be honest with you and just tell you that I actually thought that the idea that obesity was genetic had been thrown out years ago, because I thought that we had already figured out that it had to do more with your environment, right? That the people around you and the way that you eat, the way that your parents eat, the way that they've been feeding you, I thought that we had already figured this out. That there was an environment, a huge environmental piece of the puzzle that was playing a huge role. So generation to generation, yeah, our families kind of look similar. Okay, but I still hear this thrown out over and over and over again. I still hear it that, oh, I'm big boned. I can't, oh, my family has a history of weight, and so I can't lose weight. I hear this all the time. Frustrating. So I went to the internet because I'm always curious to know, what will I find if I go online and search for any of this stuff? Am I going to find something that's helpful, or am I going to find something that reinforces stupidity? I'll let you be the judge of what I found, because I found a Harvard article, and the article was from June 2019. And it stated that genes were likely a significant factor in obesity if you've been overweight most of your life, if one or more or one or both of your parents are overweight, or if you can't lose weight when you exercise more and eat low calories. And they do specify for a few months. So if those three things are there, you are likely dealing with a gene problem. The problem that I have with that is that, well, wouldn't my parents feeding me the foods that they were eating that caused them to be obese contribute just as much to me being obese as my genes would? Like if I'm only eating food that is towards an obesogenic situation, wouldn't that mean that I would, okay. And even if I would try to fight this pattern and do a low calorie exercising scenario, if I've grown up in a household where cookies, ice cream, cake, and whatever candy, soda has been part of my lifestyle, is there a possibility that even though I'm doing this low calorie diet, I might still be allowing myself to have diet cookies, diet soda, diet cakes, diet candies, diet all, which we know still contribute to weight gain because they still, first of all, have carbohydrates in them. But second of all, right? And what kind of vegetables am I choosing? I'm probably choosing the vegetables that taste the best, which again are usually the vegetables that push us towards weight gain. So I feel like even though this article is trying to imply somehow that this is a genetic problem, it still seems to me that there's a lot of environmental stuff in those three factors. So I went to another study or another article, sorry, the National Library of Medicine. And this study from the National Library of Medicine was from July 2023. And it starts off by saying that obesity is closely linked to genetics and environmental. So it's closely linked to both. Okay. And it talks about epigenetics. And of course, I got pulled into a rabbit hole because now I'm like, what is epigenetics? So I had to look that up. And then I find that this article from the Center for Disease Control in May 2024 talking about epigenetics. Epigenetics refers to how your behaviors and environments can cause changes that affect the way your genes work. So, unlike genetic changes, which are mutations of the genes, so the genes are no longer the same, they've actually changed. That's not what's happening here. Epigenetic changes are reversible and do not change the sequence of DNA. So, these things can change your body because of how your body is reading DNA. Long story. That would make me believe, but I'm not, I think this is how I'm understanding this is right, but I'm going to say it out loud because it makes me believe that if you eat the wrong foods, even if your body wants to be at the right weight, it can't do it because you're eating the wrong food. So the environment is then going to cause your genetics to express themselves towards obesity rather than expressing themselves towards the correct weight that your body would have wanted to read had you been eating the right foods. Okay, so since I've been out of school for quite a while, but I do seem to recall something about genetic disorders that was talking about the type. There's a type of genetic disorder that sounded like epigenetics. I decided to go look that up because I just wasn't sure if I was remembering that correctly. So I looked it up and I found this Cleveland Clinic, August 2021, again, article talking about what mutations affect your genes and that there's three kinds of mutations. And the one that I was looking for, because now this is talking about your genes. So you have a disorder where your genes are actually changed. And this is the multifactorial one that caught my attention because that one is a gene mutation plus other factors. But then they start talking about these other factors. So chemical exposure, diet, certain medications, tobacco, and alcohol. And all of a sudden I'm looking at them saying like, but that is that a gene mutation, or is that like these things that absolutely impact your body? If you have a chemical exposure and your body's frantically trying to repair you, might your weight go up? Is that a gene mutation? Is that a gene mutation that's happening right there? Or are they saying that if I didn't have that gene mutation, but I got exposed to the same chemical, my weight wouldn't have changed? This confused me because now I can't see the difference between, well, what's epigenetics? Something happened to me, and a consequence of that was my weight went up. Like all these medications that we are constantly taking that cause our weight to go up, like people who drink and their weight goes up, like people who overeat and their weight. These are, I thought, what would be considered epigenetic, But could there be an underlying mutation? But if it's a mutation, that would mean that if I eat normally, it would no longer, I wouldn't be able to go back, right? Because that was part of the epigenetic. You can't go back. But what do we see, Wellness Warrior? Right? We see that people who eat on plan, the majority of them go back. So I do think there's a small subset of people here that get damaged, like irrevocably damaged, but it's not the majority. And so saying that obesity across the board, obesity in our world today is genetic. What I think is that these 4 slides help me to understand something. Something that seemed simple years and years and years and years ago has become complicated because of all the science that we've layered on top, right? It's become like ideas have become intertwined together in a way that we normal people have a hard time teasing apart what's actually related and what's not related to help ourselves to get our bodies back to a healthy weight. And so we are looking to the science, we are looking to the doctors, we are looking to the nutritionists and all the people who are in the world of diet and health and medicine and weight and all this stuff to help us understand what we're supposed to do to be at our healthy weight. But I think that this is all complicated on purpose. That those definitions are so close, like why and then when you, I mean, I could show you the rest of the searching I did, but it just keeps coming back to these convoluted ideas of, well, if your family was like that, it's genetic. And that one person who isn't fat, well, they're the exception to the rule. Or maybe they're just eating properly. So again, there's a question mark for me. We have all been trying our best to eat low calorie, to exercise more, and be healthy like everybody else. And my big question to you is, who's the everybody else? Wellness Warrior. 42.2% of Americans fit the definition of obesity in 2018. 71% of that population was overweight. So we're either overweight or obese, and the numbers are rising. Back in 2018, that means that only 29% of people were living their life at a healthy weight. We aren't actually doing it. That's what I'm trying to get you to see. We aren't actually living our life eating low calorie and exercising more and beating this obesity thing. We're not actually doing it. That's part of the problem that we don't understand. We are looking for our body to overcome something, this epigenetic portion of the story. We're looking for our body to overcome something that it cannot overcome, because when we're in the world and we're living in this world, what we interact with actually changes the way that our body will express its genes. So our weight is rising steadily because we don't understand that eating high carb is what's causing weight gain rather than this idea of high calorie, because you can do low calorie and still be high carb. I'm not sure if I'm making myself clear, so I'm going to say that directly. I can eat a lot of calories from both carbohydrate and fat and protein, but I can also eat a small amount of calories from carbohydrate, because you get 4 calories per gram. I can have the same number of grams carbohydrates versus fat, but this is less calories, the carbohydrates, right? And I feel like that's something that we don't understand, because there's another little sneaky thing here, is that the carbohydrates have a huge, huge, huge impact on our body. So I want to let you in on a little secret, because you need to understand that your genes are involved in you gaining weight. They are, because gaining weight is actually safer for your body than getting poisoned by having too much sugar, carbohydrates in your blood. See, those calories that they're telling you to lower, but it allows more carbohydrates to come in, are actually poisonous to us. Keep in mind, this is not a disorder. This is not a disease. And it's certainly not a genetic problem. It's actually how our body is supposed to function, because our body is supposed to remove excess sugar that we eat from our blood, basically to keep us safe. Now, what does our body do with the sugar that it removes from our blood? We don't have a door where it could just throw it outside. Our body has to put it somewhere to stop it from harming us. And where does it put it? A body that's working properly puts it in fat storage. Yeah. A body that's working properly puts it in fat storage. The part that kind of blows my mind, Wellness Warrior, is that if I'm overweight, so I'm not talking about the point where I get to obesity, but if I'm just overweight, as much as it looks unpleasant to me, I can be metabolically healthy and overweight. As a matter of fact, I just recently learned, and I think it was, oh, I can't remember the doctor, but I don't want to say the wrong doctor. I just recently learned that that people who are overweight, not obese, but just overweight, tend to live longer. Now, what was the definition of overweight that they were using? What kind of, how much of it was fat? How much of it was muscle? The doctor didn't go into that in detail. Just threw that comment out there that there is a reality that people who are heavier tend to live a little longer. My big guess here is that, yes, you have some fat, but you also have some muscle. And that's normal for us to do. We do that naturally. If you eat things that are high in carbohydrate, your body's going to store some of that as fat. But if you're still living your life and using your muscles and lifting heavy things and, playing with your kids and doing all the things for good health, your body's going to make muscle too. Our body is keeping us safe by putting it in fat storage. What I think would be more of a mutation is when you see your body putting fat in places that, sorry, no, not fat. When you see your body, well, it could be fat, because sometimes our body does put fat in places that are dangerous, like around our organs, but also when it's putting sugar in places that is dangerous. So putting sugar, like in and it's creating problems for our arteries, and which could be in our eyes and our extremities. And people are having all these conditions that now we're not actually healthy anymore. People are having inflammation. You're not actually healthy anymore. We need to understand that this thing that we're calling a genetic problem, being obese, well, obese part, yes, being overweight or having some fat on the body. Let me put it like that. Having some fat on the body is not a genetic problem. Too much fat on the body still isn't, in my opinion, a genetic problem. It's your body doing exactly what it's programmed to do. When it can't put any more fat on your body and it starts putting sugar in the wrong places, when it can't put the fat in the subcutaneous and it starts putting it internally, stacking it around your organ, that's a problem, a genetic outcome, an epigenetic problem, in my opinion, because that's when I see that the world, well, but it started before that. Let me back up. It started before that. See, this problem starts when you're eating so much carbohydrate because you're trying to do this low calorie diet that's high in carbohydrate, that's stopping your body from being able to function the way it wants to function, because now a lot of its time is taken up, first of all, storing away that sugar that's harmful in whatever way it can at the point that you happen to be right now. But all that carbohydrate coming in means that we're actually not feeding our body the best possible building blocks and energy source to help it build and repair. So our body is struggling on both fronts. It's struggling because too much carb is coming in. Ooh, that's toxic. And it's struggling because it's not getting enough building blocks to help us to heal ourselves. I think that over the years, it seems so long to us, right? If I look at my entire life, that seems long to me. But I need to understand that my entire life is a blip on the history of humans. So if we go back to when we started to rise in weight, and if we go back before that to when we were smart enough to start to understand some of these medical things that we understand today. So I'm going back to like maybe 1900s, maybe 1800s, maybe if I even go back to 1700s, we still need to understand that maybe instead of that being a blip, that's like 50 blips on the trajectory of the entirety of humans. We haven't been this smart for this long. Our brains are increasing at an astonishing rate. Our knowledge is increasing at an astonishing rate. But we are not smarter than our body. Our body has been there this entire time, and this internal information that we're just figuring out has been doing this entire time. We don't know better than our body. We should be following our body, but instead we keep trying to tell our body to take this garbage and do something good with it. Your body cannot take garbage and make an amazing home for you, the same way that you wouldn't be able to go to the junkyard and get scraps and build a beautiful brand new mansion. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't be the quality as if you used new materials. It just wouldn't. We need to stop pretending that our body doesn't know what to do and start listening to the information our body is giving us. Because here's what you don't know. Your body is not used to having access to fruits and vegetables all the year round. That wasn't a thing before, Wellness Warrior. Before we, in our smartness, figured out how to ship things around the world and then fly things around the world, we weren't able to get fruits and vegetables all year round. Oh, and by the way, even when we were able to send them around the world, we still couldn't have them all year round because we didn't have a way to keep them fresh. Canning and refrigeration have completely changed the way that we are eating day to day. And our body, our body that's been around for thousands and hundreds of thousands of years, in our little span of 100, 200, when did we get refrigeration? I don't even know, but like whenever that happened, which was not 20,000, 40,000 years. So in that little bit of time that we have been doing this refrigeration thing, that blip on the scale, our body is not used to having fruits and vegetables all the year round. Our body is definitely not used to having seed oils and vegetable oils instead of animal fats. That is completely new, Wellness Warrior. We weren't even doing that 70, 80, let's say 80 years ago. 80 years ago, the majority of what we were intaking was animal fats. And if we were getting these other fats, it probably was by accident. not because we were seeking them out. Oh, we had olive oil. We had olive oil. So we might have been getting a small amount of vegetable or plant-based oil, I'll call it. But that's not a vegetable oil. That's an actual oil that you can get naturally without chemicals. What we need to understand about seed oils, vegetable oils, is that there isn't, other than olive, avocado, coconut, like those are the majority of the oils on the market to the average everyday person to purchase. And there might be others that I can't think of, but I'm thinking about when I go to my grocery store, what are the oils that I see that actually can naturally be extracted without chemicals from a plant? Olive, avocado, coconut. Those are the ones that I know about. Maybe there might be a few more. But when you see canola oil, vegetable oil, all these other oils that you see, you need to go in and check. You need to look at the label first of all. It should be on the label whether it was chemically, and I can't remember what the wording is for that. So I would go online to double check that one. I haven't looked that up in a while. But you can verify whether or not the oil was extracted chemically, if it can be extracted in a natural way. Because again, those three that I named, avocado, olive, and coconut, can be extracted in a natural way. Just beating them up and the oil comes out. Why are we eating things that are chemically extracted? Because it's cheaper to make. The physical time it takes to have some kind of machine or right doing like smashing that up and then straining it and smashing it up some more and straining it, and versus put a chemical on it, grab that stuff out, first of all. But second of all, those vegetables that they're extracting, and they're actually seeds, first of all, from what I understand, mostly coming from seeds. And it's not natural to get an oil out of these things. So you couldn't even smash them up and get the oil out. You have to get it chemically. This all started to oil machines, to protect machines, to do things. It wasn't meant for us to eat. We should not be eating it. We should never have been eating it. I really want us all to figure out that this is not the right thing for our bodies. And there's a third thing that we need to understand, right? Our body is not used to having more vegetation than animal protein. What do I mean by that? Sure, in season, when there was vegetation for us to actually eat that wouldn't poison us immediately, we would have eaten vegetation in season. But that season would have been what? 2 months, 3 months? And then there's 9 other months of the year that what would we have been eating, Wellness Warrior? We would have been catching animals and eating animals. Again, at some point we learned how to preserve things and save things. So maybe some of that fruit would have lasted a bit more than 3 months, but it wouldn't have lasted a year. We have things that sit on shelves for years with an S. No natural food would ever have sat on a shelf for years with an S. So we, again, have to stop and ask ourselves, well, how's that possible? Chemicals. Okay. But now, is that safe for us to eat? So a food infused with chemicals, when I'm starving and have nothing else, sure, I'm going to eat it. A food infused with chemicals, when I have fresh food that I can go buy in the grocery, why would I ever do that? And I'm cautioning all of you to ask yourself that question. Why would I eat chemical infused, going to make me sick food when I can go to the grocery store and get fresh food? Now, and there's going to be a lot of people that are going to say, oh, but the grocery store food has chemicals on the vegetables and fruits they spray. Yes, they do. They give antibiotics to the animals that we eat. They do that too. My question, I'm going to put back to you. So do I eat the thing that has less chemicals on it or the thing that has more chemicals on it? Do you think that the vegetation that they've used to make those boxed things does not have those pesticides? Of course it does. It has the pesticides, the same ones, and then they've dehydrated it. So maybe heaven only knows if we aren't concentrating those pesticides down even more. And then they still add other things to keep this thing from spoiling on the shelf. We need to stop talking to ourselves like we don't understand the people that we're dealing with. I want you to choose to eat the healthy food more than you're choosing to eat the processed, the ultra processed garbage, because that garbage isn't helping you at all. And if we fix these 3 simple things, Wellness Warrior, you're actually going to live life at a healthy weight much further into the future. Food companies, they're going to be annoyed, right? Because, well, maybe the farmers will be happier. That could be a positive thing, because I think that our farmers who are trying so hard to make what they are believing is healthy food, and I'm going to give them credit for that, because up until 6 years ago, I thought it was healthy food too. And yet they don't even live the good life that the people that are creating garbage. How many flavors of ketchup? How many brands of ketchup do we need? How many flavors of cereal do we need? How many soda kinds do we need? All of these things ruining our health. But the farmers, they're not rich. Who are rich? The companies that are making garbage. Well, maybe the top of the farmer, like, because farmers have to buy their seeds from specific places. So the people that sell the seeds, they're rich. But again, they're creating seeds that have genetic mutations to help them be resistant, so that they can, last in the weather and not be eaten by bugs. But if they're lasting in the weather and not being eaten by bugs, they become even more toxic to us. Nobody's talking about that part, because most people don't know about that part, because it's not thrown out there as common knowledge, because fruits and vegetables are healthier than animal products. I want us to stop believing that lie, because it comes all back down to this. We end up thinking that the foods we're eating isn't what's causing us to be fat. We end up thinking that the foods we're eating should be allowing us to be thin, even though 71% of our population in 2018 was overweight, 42.4% of that being obese. We aren't actually doing it. I'm saying that again. We aren't doing it. It isn't because of our genes. It's because of what we're eating. Now, they're going to say, oh, but it's our genes. That's why no matter what we eat. No, because here's another piece of the puzzle. I am that person in the picture on the thumbnail that you clicked. And I was 80 pounds overweight when that picture was 80 plus pounds. I hadn't actually weighed myself in I don't know how long. And I didn't weigh myself when I started eating properly. So I don't know all the weight that I lost. And I had already started losing weight by the time I checked. But I can tell you, I lost more than 80 pounds. And I didn't do it by changing my genetics. I know lots of people who've lost 80 plus pounds. If you check on this channel, I have so many interviews with people who not only got their health back, but lost weight. None of them changed their genetics. Remember, if my genetics are broken, there's nothing I can do about it. So what we're actually changing are epigenetic factors, Wellness Warrior. It's not a genetic. Now, here's one of the things that people in marketing, people in the world of selling us stuff love to do. They love to interchange words and make them sound either like they're the same or like they're very different. I'll give you an example of both. In this case, genetics and epigenetics are being switched as if they're the same thing, and they're not. As we saw earlier, genetics is the genes that tell my body how to build me, how to do stuff in me. And if you have a genetic mutation, that cannot be reversed. So if my obesity, because I was classified as obese in that picture, was genetic, I could not have lost the weight. That's what that means. Epigenetic obesity, though, does not mean that. It means that something in my environment is causing my obesity. So I'm going to go back to that line and that said, like, you have a mutation plus, and they have diet there. They have, right? If I'm a genetic mutation that's just going to gain weight, even if I were to eat like this, I would still gain weight because the genetic mutation would happen. It's only epigenetics where it's reversible. So tobacco isn't going to cause it. Alcohol isn't going to cause it unless the tobacco and alcohol actually damage my genes throughout my body. Maybe that's a thing. If that's a thing, that would be the only way I could see that happening. But if that's not a thing, and my stem cells can still create new versions of whatever, or right, like if the cell that needs to replicate is damaged, I'm messed up. That's basically what I'm saying. But if the cell that needs to replicate is not damaged, the DNA there is not damaged, then my body can go and get that data and rebuild me. Wellness warrior. This is how people who do keto, low carb, carnivore, this is how we're doing it. We are giving our body the correct building blocks, the correct energy to be able to go to the data that it has and rebuild us. I said I was going to give you two examples. One of them switching it for words that are different, which is genetics and epigenetics are two completely different things. Let me give you the example of them switching it for two words that are the same and saying that they're different. When you turn over the package and you look to see what's in my food, and you're looking at, first of all, let's look at the ingredients. We are aware sugar is not healthy for us. So these very smart marketers are now going to that label and they're saying, oh, there's no sugar in here. There's agave syrup. There's organic cane sugar, which is different than sugar somehow. But the astute will notice that sugar is still there. But the other people are going to say, but it's organic, so it's okay. They're going to say honey. They're going to say natural fruit juices. When I learned that was a way of switching out sugar, because right, natural fruit juices is basically, where do you get sugar from, Wellness Warrior? You get it from fruits and vegetables and plants, basically plants. So when they say natural fruit juices, it's just a tricky way of saying sugar. All of these things are sugar. And if you go further up on that nutrition label, so you have the ingredients down there higher up, you have the content where they break down the macronutrients. And they have carbohydrates and then a subcategory under carbohydrates, sugar. And again, they're pointing you towards the fact that of the sugar in this product, they're going to have sugar listed as much lower number than the carbohydrate number. Again, knowing that people are picking it up and looking for how much sugar is in this. And what the average everyday person, is not aware is that actually the amount of sugar in this product is the amount of carbohydrate in this product. Carbohydrate and sugar are two words for the exact same thing. Sugar is the everyday language person word. Carbohydrate is the, scientist person word, but it's the same stuff. Sucrose, glucose, sugar, carbohydrate, fructose, lactose, galactose, carbohydrate. They are all the same thing. The same way that chickens and turkeys are both birds. So if they were to say to you, oh, there aren't that many birds There aren't that many. If you are trying to avoid chickens and they say, oh, there's not that many chickens in here, there's only this month, like, but really what your doctor wants you to do is avoid birds. Well, now we're in that situation, right? Sugar is sugar, is carbohydrates, is carbohydrates. It's the same stuff, wellness warrior. It's frustrating to me because it's on purpose. It's on purpose. All the different ways that they talk about obesity, overweightness, the genetic problems that we live related to obesity, and how they're putting everything, and the fact that people are sick, the fact that people are homebound. I was watching Homestead How and Carrie and his friend Bill had a conversation on each channel. They had it. I watched both of their videos, and Bill being housebound for 7+ years, I believe, is so sad, and over things that I'm sure he might have thought were genetic. I just can't. I don't like. This is how my body functions. To find out, thank goodness that Carrie and he got in touch, that he could change that, wellness warrior, with how he was eating. And there are a lot of people that just don't know that if they would just eat a keto, low carb, or carnivore lifestyle, that their weight would regulate. And I'm throwing low carb in there because the truth is, I've known a lot of people that did low carb and got their life back. It's reality. Not everybody is as damaged as I was, and not everybody is as old as I was when I figured this out. If you're a young person, theoretically, you could do low carb and be fine. What I'm hopeful for is that you do low carb, you see the impact on your health, and you decide to go to keto, because the less carbs in your diet, the better. It's not only about weight loss. Eating those plants is putting toxins in your body. And that's just reality, wellness warrior. And I want us to understand the reality. And the reality is our body is not used to having fruits and vegetables year round. Our body is not used to having seed oils instead of animal fats. And our body is not used to having more vegetation than animal protein. Fix those three things. Please, I'm begging you, fix those three things. And if you're new here, I want to encourage you to take a look at the video in the description on how to learn to solve your sugar cravings. So sugar cravings, I'm saying sugar because I know most people understand sugar. Because you can do that. You can solve your sugar cravings. It's in the description. It will be linked at the end of the video. And you can check out my channel for all the other things that I talk about in terms of how to get your health back. I want to turn my attention right now to the people that are here. Hello, everyone. I really hope that you got something out of today's topic, because I know it's a heavier topic talking about genes, but I just wanted to talk about this because I think that many people are stuck because they just don't know. If you want more videos like this, by the way, subscribe, because I do jump into these topics whenever I can, because it's important for us to understand there's more to being healthy than weight loss. There's more to it, and we're being fooled. That's the other part, and we need to understand that on purpose, which drives me nuts. But sing it. Hello, glad you are here. The only thing I know for sure that I've inherited from mom is lipedema. That being said, there's so much still under my control to manage and maintain. It still comes down to food and exercise. Can I point out that lipedema is one of the great examples of potentially, and I guess we'll see as you move forward, but potentially that there's some kind of code change that happened, and then eating certain foods is pushing us in this direction, right? But there's still a part of me that wonders, So that genetic mutation, is it a genetic mutation that's there, or is it an expression of some code, and my body still would be doing better for me, good for me, if I had always been eating appropriately? These are questions that drive me nuts, that I don't know the answer to, that I would love to have the answer to. Because again, this whole idea that the code then would say that it's not reversible, if we go by what they're saying is genetic versus epigenetic, versus, yeah, the code is there, but not everybody expresses it if they don't go over that carb count, and or if they eat the right kind of meats, or if they, and then there's that, what is that? Or does everybody just expresses it? So it's a question mark. And I would love to know more from you, Sing It, when you figure it out. Like I know that you're working hard and your life is changing and you're seeing progress, and I really think that your improvements would then help other people to know that they should keep working on it, because I know you're working on it, as you've talked to me multiple times and let me know that you're working on it, and it's just amazing. And I love hearing from you and knowing that you're working on it. Proverbs 31, eating habits are the things we get from family. Eating habits are things we get from family. Genetics. So, like, yeah, yes and no. I mean, eating habits are things we learn from family. Genetics is the DNA code, right? But I think, I do feel that, again, this is a great example of saying that, trying to make two things equal each other that don't equal each other, right? Because genetics isn't the same as learning from my family, which is, that's called nurture. So that's the learned aspect of why family members are similar. And we do learn a lot of things from our family, things that we don't even notice that we're learning. So for example, there are certain mannerisms that I have that I know 100%, like I got from my mom. But at the same time, there were other mannerisms that I had gotten from family members that I no longer liked, so I taught myself not to do them. So yes, but no, right? Because we can change things that were learned. We can't change things that were genetic, right? Like, no matter what I want, my eyes will always be brown. I can put contacts in and change the color, which I've done multiple times. I think it's fun. But in reality, take that contact out, my eyes are brown. And it's just reality. And I think that we have to allow ourselves to understand that certain things are just the way they are. Dr. Boz Dr. Boz might have said it, but that's not the person that I heard say it. I wish I could remember who it was, but I wasn't watching Dr. Boz. But although I have seen some of her videos. Gradual Legends, hello. Seed oils and vegetable oils were used for machinery and other not edible reasons. Totally. And this is why I want us to recognize that this is just a dangerous thing for us to be doing. We should not be eating these things. They're not helping us. Zuri, hello. Your videos have helped. Thank you. Oh, I appreciate you, Zuri. I'm definitely going to add your name to my list. I appreciate that. Greetings, Pam. How are you doing? I love it when you come by. Nice to see you in here. I'm wondering, have any of you had that, where your family just pushes this idea of big boned, or like there's nothing we can do, it's just how we are, or that's kind of stuff. And what do they say when they see your progress, if you've had progress, and they're noticing it? Like, does it change the idea that it's just the way we are? I'm curious to know. So let's just say it. Okay. Why the double talking jargon about epigenetics? It's hard enough to think of ourselves past bad programming to make right food choices any harder. Forget. Twinkies it is. Yeah, you know what, Sing It? I totally agree with you. I think it's so first of all, let me back up. Everybody in the science world wants to be published. So we're going to start there. And so if you're researching something and you can get it published, you're happy about that. So talking about epigenetics is a new-ish thing, Like the way that the world impacts the expression of our genes is a new-ish thing. And I think that that's why epigenetics is being more spoken about. And of course, it's going to get published and people are interested in it. And that's all terrific. It's good for us to have that. But every time we publish new information, food companies come along and say, oh, how can we use this information to sell more and this is where things get messed up. If you saw my video a little while back where Dr. Shanahan was talking about manipulation and Ansel Keys and like being on the forefront of that manipulation, I think it makes an important point, right? That when food companies know that certain topics are going to impact the way that people will purchase foods, then they can come in and get researchers who need the money to change the way that they're presenting things. And that's what I think we're seeing here, where something that's epigenetic is being called genetic, right? And it's clearly like, just because I've been obese or overweight most of my life does not mean I can't lose weight. That's a ridiculous thing to write. And does not mean that that's genetic. That's a ridiculous thing to write. You can't use the outcome to prove the outcome, right? Oh, you're overweight, so therefore you must be genetically programmed to be overweight. No, that's not how that works, especially when we know that food plays a huge role. But the problem is, although the average person knows food plays a role, the average person doesn't actually understand that food is the 80% reason that they're overweight. And I think that is an interesting thing, because I would honestly believe, and again, Wellness Warriors, let me know if you would have thought this too before learning all of what we've learned together and what you've learned from other doctors. I think the average person would have believed that weight loss was 80% exercise, and only much less of it was to do with what you're eating. It was a calorie deficit that you need to be in, right? That was what they were pushing for years. Calorie deficit means if I exercise more than the amount of energy coming in, I will lose weight. And yet it never happens long term. You can do it in the short term, but you can't make it sustainable. Why? Well, because first of all, your body's been still saving a little bit of energy, so been storing fat a little bit the whole time, even though your weight was going down, because you were still eating carbohydrate. You're just using more energy than your body couldn't keep up. But second of all, the other reason we can't maintain it long term is because your body adjusts. It's what our body does. Our body adjusts. And we need to accept that our body will adjust, because it's what it's, again, it's not a flaw. It's the way our body is supposed to work. Can you imagine if your body kept burning 2,000 calories forever when only 1,000 calories was available? Think about people who are in scenarios where they don't control their food, and that's the amount of energy coming in. They would pass. It wouldn't be logical for their body to do that. Think of back in the Wayback Machine, when we were living on land that couldn't give us produce because of winter here in Canada. Winter, we didn't have produce. We had to catch something. And if you didn't catch something, and your energy would, at some point, your energy would be gone. You wouldn't be able to do it anymore, Wellness Warrior. So all of these things bring us to the point where you have to understand that it just wouldn't be a thing. It wouldn't be possible to keep going forward. Gradual Legend says it all starts with the lab. They make garbage for us to eat. Then they make double the profits when we get sick with pharmaceuticals. And then we are full. So basically, they're full drug dealers. I couldn't agree more. It's crazy. It's crazy. We eat more garbage than we eat real food today. And I want to see that turn around. That's why I make these videos. I want to see that turn around. I want more people to be eating more real food than processed anything. And if you get to the point where there's no processed food in your diet, congratulations. I'll tell you, it feels good. It feels good to like not be eating things that are produced in a plant. And the only way to really get there is to make it a goal of yours, right? Like you need to walk yourself through reducing reducing the amount of garbage in your life. And then as you move forward and reduce more and more garbage, you'll get to the point where you'll realize that I don't even need that. It doesn't taste good to me anymore. I don't want it anymore. And trust me, when you get there, you're going to love that because it feels amazing. Good morning, Violet. Hope you're well. I've noticed that eating ground beef keeps me fully satiated. Put fatty pork chops. Oh, but fatty pork chop leave me hungry, and I'm triggered to binge, um, eat or crave sugar. Any ideas with this? Ooh, Chris, that's an interesting question. My first inclination, because I do eat a lot of pork, and I will. So my first inclination, if you want to get pork in, and you're feeling, well, okay, I have two things to say, but like if you want to get pork in and you're feeling that the pork chops aren't working for you, there is ground pork and the fat content is pretty high. I'd probably try that. That's my first thing to say. But the second thing I'm going to say is if you're making your pork chops on a grill and you're letting the fat leave your pork chop, that could also be part of the reason. What I've started doing, what I've always done when I cook in the house is that I cook in a frying pan. I did at one point back in my days of Fat is Bad have one of those pans that like the frying pan, like, so it's not a frying pan, it's a griddle for inside the house where the meat would be raised up so that the fat could drain away. Don't use that anymore. Now I put my meat in the oil, so basically in the tallow, lard. And when I do lard, I usually do lard with butter together because I find it makes a nice crisp on your meat. Yeah. So I'm either cooking with tallow or lard. And I like to make sure I cook in that oil so that instead of losing oil, I'm actually getting more oil into my foods. What I do sometimes, I will cook with bacon. So I'll fry some bacon before I make my meal. So I'll fry up some bacon and then I'll cook in that bacon oil. And then the nice thing about doing that is that if I'm having eggs with my meal, which a lot of the times I do, I can then cook my eggs in that oil and recuperate some of the oil that way as well. All of these things helping me to keep my, actually, maybe that's part of the reason lately pork chops, because I have different kinds of pork chops. Some of them are a leaner meat than others, but they still have fat on the outside. But it's just, I'm actually on my last pack of this, and I'm not going to buy it again. But while I do have it, I'm eating it. And what I've been doing is finishing up, especially that kind of a meal, with scrambled eggs in the oil that came from. And that has been extremely helpful because you're getting back a lot of the fat in that scenario. And that helps me to feel satiated. So I hope that some of those ideas, Chris, were helpful to you because obviously if I eat a healthy meal and then right away afterwards I'm feeling starving, that doesn't help me to want to stay on track, first of all. And if you're being pulled towards sugar, the other piece of the puzzle I'm going to help you to see is that you're being pulled towards sugar because quick fixes for you always used to be sugar. Like even today, which I'm 6 years, right? 6 years in, when I'm hungry, I don't think sugary things anymore because I'm 6 years in. When I'm hungry, if it's too early for supper and I wanted to have something, I would be thinking bacon. But that doesn't happen to me very often because I really have dialed in my fat intake, and my protein has been upped, by the way. I've added to the amount of protein I'm eating. So just over a pound now. And I'm not sure where that's going to end. I'm slowly going up to see, like, how I feel. Make sure that I keep sleeping well and all the positives. Make sure that my weight remains stable, which so far it has. So I'm watching everything as I go up, but I definitely I'm feeling good where I am. And I'm also trying to make sure I don't lose, because the last time I increased my protein, I lost some weight, and that was a bit frustrating to me. So, but I have a goal to try to climb more. So I think if I get that going, I'll put on muscle, and that my weight can stay stable that way. But yeah, I have noticed that if I do get hungry, my first thought is typically, if it's close enough to supper, I'll just make supper right away. I have no problem eating a little bit earlier. And if it's not close to supper and I actually feel like I'm going to eat something, I would get bacon. But usually when I drink some water, I realize I was just thirsty. And so I move on, which is the other thing I would encourage you to think about too, Chris, is maybe just double checking and having some water and making sure that you weren't just thirsty, because our signal for thirst and hunger is the same as our stomach. And so I would also verify that. Good morning, Lynn. How are you doing? I'm glad to see that you were able to catch the live. Sing it. I'm a bit behind. Had to address a client. Yes, Bill's story is amazing. 2xing my way back to the current. Can't wait to see the actual documentary. I am so looking forward to that documentary. I'm excited for it. There's also a Canadian rancher, if I'm getting that right, who's been carnivore her entire life, just didn't even know that it was a thing. That was just the way she always ate. And I'm excited to hear her story. And I saw a picture of her, and can I just say, her face looked so much younger. Like, she's in her 80s. And if you would have just showed me that picture and said, how old is this woman? I would have said, 40 something. And not only that, but the happiness in her face looked childlike. Like, I feel like she had that look on her face. I feel like I get that look on my face anytime I'm interacting with like my nieces and nephews, and they learn something new, and you see that kind of light up that happens. That's when I get that look on my face. And like, it's so amazing to me to see that on this lady. Is like, she just looks like vibrant and alive, and it was amazing. I'm looking forward to it. Hello, Alana A. Thanks. I am enjoying your talk today. I appreciate you taking the time to let me know that you appreciate this. Thank you. I have a question from Pam. Remember the saying, it's only baby fat. You'll lose it when you get older. Oh, wow. Yeah. And then, of course, we have the other things that we're told, like, oh, it's because you had children. So it's so weird, because when I was pregnant, I was the same weight for same weight. No, I was gaining weight, but my body looked the same for up until I think it was the 6th month, maybe my stomach started to show. And then, and like, 3 months, like boom, my tummy popped out. And then I had my daughter, and my weight went back to near what it was relatively quickly. Believe it or not, I gained the weight that you see in that picture from about the time she was 3 till whenever that picture was. So years later, 13, I think it was when that picture was taken around. So in 10 years, I got to that. And it's like, it's really funny, because they say they were going to blame the fact that I had a kid. But if it was because I had a kid, how did I do this? Right? And it wasn't because I had a kid. Well, not because I carried her. It was because after having her, my focus on what I was eating dramatically fell. Of course, I was focused on what she was eating, and I was focused getting to work. And by the way, back then, was I overworked? Oh my goodness. Like, the company that I was working for did not seem to care that people overworked. I'll say it like that. Overtime, not even paid. You have to take it back as time. And even when you're trying to take it back as time, they're fighting you for it. So just bad scenario. And of course, a stressful life. And that's what I weighed. So I definitely think we're told a lot of stories about why. Oh, when you get older, as you get older, you're going to gain weight. Another story that we're told. all of this towards you're just supposed to be fat, and it's not reality. We are supposed to be healthy. And if we were still living outside with the other animals, not being able to run away from whatever found me would mean that I wouldn't be here anymore. Not being able to fight whatever found me would mean I'm not able to be here anymore. And we're fragile as humans, right? So running was one of our biggest things to get away. When my knees and hip were hurting me, I would have been caught, once warrior. And how sad of a day would that have been? So, no, it's not reality that we're just, as we age, oh, we're just, it's just a trajectory that's downward and steep. No, it's downward. I'm not going to say it's not downward, but it's not as steep as it's been for the majority of us. And if you look at some of these, sometimes I like to watch YouTubers who are much older than me. So Dr. Baker is great for this, and Dr. Kiltz is great for this, of like showing some of their workouts and just showing what they're able to do at their age. And I want to be able to do what they do at that age. I don't like the idea that just says that as you move forward, oh, your body's going to fall apart and you're not going to be able to bear it. You're going to be getting out of the chair making noises. And by the way, Wellness Warrior, back when I had my problem 6 years ago, I was getting out of the chair making noises. Do you know how depressing that was? To make noise like I was an old person at 46. Crazy. It's crazy. And that's where I was. It was sad. So sad. And I'm happy today that I'm able to climb and longboard. Actually, I want to go for a longboard ride today. It's been raining here in Montreal. I haven't been able to go. It's on my agenda for today. I have to do some errands, and when I come back from my errands, I'm going to go for a ride. And that's happening. So, and maybe I'm going to try to keep myself accountable to making it happen by saying I'm going to post it in the squad after I've done it. I'm going to take a picture and post it in the squad. So there you go. I'm going to put some accountability on myself because I want to go. I want to have some fun today. Sue Bashir, good afternoon. Thank you for saying I'm inspiring. I appreciate that. I hope that watching these videos help you to do some great things for yourself. Maya, how did you deal with the constant desire to eat? I don't have a constant desire to eat today. So let me make sure I put that out there. So when I started my keto journey, because I did not start as a carnivore, the first 5 days were very interesting. So day 1, 2, and 3 of eating low, I'm going to call it low carb because I was nowhere near keto numbers. I didn't really understand how to make that happen yet. But day 1, 2, and 3 felt fine. I was eating. I had good amounts of vegetables on my plate because I understood that from Dr. Berg. I had a good amount of meat on my plate because I understood from Dr. Westman and I can't remember Dr. Fung and all that are supposed to eat the right amount of protein. We should not be under eating our protein. So Dr. Fung and Dr. Westman and I think those were the 3 doctors I had at the very, very, very beginning, helped me to understand those 3 things. So I had lots of vegetables and I had a the same amount of meat that I would have eaten that I thought was a healthy amount, which was, I would say, like a full chicken leg at that point in time. And maybe my meal would have been 200 grams. Yeah, but I say like 200 grams of protein in the day based on what I thought was healthy at the time. So nothing decreased. And I was splitting that over 2 meals at the very beginning. And I was having eggs for breakfast. So that was what I was eating. And then eventually, so anyways, that first 3 days, 5 days, let's talk about that. So the first 3 days, fine. Day 4, I was ravenous the entire day. And so day 4 and 5-ish, we'll say, ravenous, but knowing that I ate a lot, ravenous. But I had other things going on. So I had headache. I was like, my temperature control was off. And at one point I felt like kind of nauseous. So a bunch of stuff was happening that luckily for me, with the work that I do, I clicked in that I was having withdrawal. In that moment, it didn't fully, I was not able to think clearly, but I picked up on it. I'm like, this seems like withdrawal symptoms. Now, so because that was the thought that came to me, I pushed through. I wasn't quite sure even in that moment, although I was able to label it, I didn't know what I was withdrawing to. But I honestly thought it was some kind of chemical and something that I was eating that I didn't know about. That was my thought. And I was like, nope, got to push through this because it's not going to derail what I'm trying to do. Eventually, Maya, what I figured out was that, in fact, what was happening is I was having withdrawal from sugar, not from a chemical in one of the foods that I was eating. So what I need you to understand is that sugar does actually activate the same pathway in our brain that drugs and alcohol and all that. Like it's the same pathway. That pleasure pathway, it's the same pathway. Other positive, gambling, like all the things that can cause us to go overboard and pull us into a bad situation, sugar activates the same pathway. So what ended up happening when I finished, so I got past my 5 days, day 6 better, day 7 even better, day 8 even better. And because I was eating a lot of food, and actually for going back to when I was overweight to this was more food than I was eating when I was overweight. So I was eating a lot of food. Because of that 7 to 10 cups of vegetables that were healthy vegetables, so that like when I was doing that, it was equaling a quite satiating meal once I got over those 2 days of withdrawal. Some people have 3 days of withdrawal, some people have 4. What I will say is that those people that talk about having weeks of keto flu, I'm going to get one of those situations where they're switching out words, keto flu, withdrawal, 2 words for the 2 ideas for the same thing, right? It's the same thing. People who talk about having withdrawal for 2-3 weeks, it's because you're cycling in and out of a ketogenic state. The reason that I had my withdrawal is because I actually dipped down into a ketogenic state. So even though I wasn't at 20 grams or less numbers, I still removed enough energy out of my body that it needed to switch over to using fat for fuel. And that means that the pathway, right? And I started to be chasing. And that's fine because it's what needed to happen, right? For me, because I did it cold turkey. I went from day 1, standard diet, day 2, I'm trying to do keto. Of course, that equals withdrawal. If you do slow tapers, the cravings and the constant desire to eat can be even higher, because when you go slow step downs, every time you step down, whatever you were eating yesterday, you're kind of still missing it, but you're still having a little bit of carb in. And so I feel like this thing that we try to do where we're trying to slowly, I mean, at some point, if you see that the slowly is causing you to constantly be thinking about food, I would just go to the number and see what happens. Because chances are, if you keep trying to do slowly and you're still fighting with yourself every single time you go to the kitchen or walk by the kitchen or smell something in the kitchen, if that makes you fight with yourself, there's more chance that you quit, because you're fighting with yourself over such a long period of time. Whereas if I quit eating the garbage today and tomorrow I'm just eating only healthy stuff, yeah, I'm going to fight myself for maybe a week. So I could tell you, in my experience, it took me 2 weeks to be at the point where I knew I solved it. And the way that I knew I solved it was I was in the kitchen cleaning up, and I moved my daughter's chocolate from one side of the counter to the other. And I didn't even have the idea or the thought past me, I want some chocolate. Normally, that action would have triggered I want some chocolate. And when I finished cleaning up the kitchen and I was walking out of the kitchen and I saw the chocolate bar again, I was like, oh my God, I didn't actually want it. And that's the only reason I even know that story, because it clicked to me as I was leaving the kitchen. That was 2 weeks in. So interestingly, When you stop feeding the the cravings stop pulling you. But you are the one that needs to stop feeding them. We are all feeding our cravings when we allow these treats in, when we allow these cheat days, when we allow insert the thing that you think you deserve that's actually harming you. When we allow those things in, we end up harming our health. So I guess the way that I dealt with the desire to eat the wrong thing was putting a hard stop on it. I don't eat that. And in my mind, every time that I want to eat something, I go and get a meal. Chris says, thanks for the tips. I usually bake them and the fat is rendered off and I discard it. I'll try pan frying. Never use tallow. I'll pick some up. Looks good. Yeah, I mean, and if you're baking, yeah, if you're baking them, I'm just trying to think, how could you? It's harder to get that oil back into your diet at that point, right? Because like, unless you just make some eggs with that oil in yours, or I'm not sure. Like, can you make eggs with that? Would there be water in it too? Maybe there'd be water in it too. I usually when I bake things, I put water in the pan. So there would be water with that. So I don't know if that would work. But yeah, if you pan fry them, Chris, can you let me know next at the next live stream? I'm not live every Monday at 11:20. Can you let me know next Monday if that worked for you? I'd love to know. You'll have to remind me. Just say, hey, Violet, I tried pan frying the pork chops and it worked or it didn't work. Because maybe we need to keep problem solving that a bit more. But ground pork is really good. If you like ground beef, ground pork is great too. Sing It says, how sad of a day would that have been about being eaten by an animal? Understatement of the year. Oh, you're so funny. Sing It. I love it. I love it. Uh, yes, my family would have been freaking the heck out. Huh? Interesting. So on the day that you had a lot of food first week, but you were ravenous. It wasn't hunger, but sugar withdrawal that felt like hunger. If so, that's epic. Yeah, I feel like I've talked about this before. My day 4. So and I like again because I'm a lazy cook. I actually knew that what I had made myself was enough because I prepared my meal for the week. So basically, how I started my keto journey, because I didn't have many recipes, was amount of meat, side dish. The side dish was the same across the board for the week because, well, if you're new here, I don't like cooking. I don't like making vegetables, right? So like I just made one big amount of vegetables, did the math on what would be 7 to 10 cups, like how much what should I take each time, and actually my math was pretty spot on. I never had a day where I had less than what I was supposed to have because I weighed everything. That's the other thing. I actually weighed everything. So what ended up happening was, yeah, by day 4, knowing that I was on a meal that I had already had in the week and felt fine. Day 5, same thing. It was a meal I already had in one of these 3 days and felt fine. But yet on these 2 days, like day 4, midday, I was like, there's something wrong. Like this is withdrawal symptoms. Day 5 confirmed it for me. Day 6, when I started to feel better, confirmed it even more. And then when I felt better, and I'm still in 7 days, I had made food for 7 days. I hadn't even gotten out of my 7 days and I felt better. So I knew that this was withdrawal. And looking at the wrong camera, I knew that this was withdrawal. And so therefore, I just allowed myself to, well, now talk to you about it because we need to understand that that's a thing. Keto flu is not a flu. Keto doesn't cause a flu. Keto can cause withdrawal. Especially if you jump right in, which is what I did. I mean, I will say most people are going to have that withdrawal at some point. Pat did, even though he did a slow taper, he still had withdrawal at some point. So everybody's going to have it at some point, but his was like short-lived, right? He was hungry. I was trying to remember what his symptoms were. They weren't mine, so I don't remember them as well. But he had a frustrating day, but maybe it was even a half day. Like it wasn't as bad as mine because by the time that he got down to the last bit, he was just really having to stop eating bread, right? So it was still enough carb to keep him out of ketosis, right? And he saw a huge change when he did get rid of it. But yeah, so those things, right? And then a few days later, the cravings were no longer there and whatever. So like he was having cravings and whatever, but it's like, it's understanding that that's what's happening. I hope that this is going to help somebody else, because I didn't realize that I hadn't made that clear before. Thank you, Chris. I look forward to hearing from you. That'll be awesome. Bard Wessel, a tip to those who struggle with arthritis. Okay. Um, sorry, can't see that. Goat or similar. Oh, making fat burning seemingly far fetched. So goat, we're much better at adjusting calorie absorption according to needs with fats than with sugars. I'm not sure if I understand this part. If you're still here, can you add to this? Because it sounds like you're saying that goat or similar kind of animals would make fat burning. Oh, okay. So you're saying that's one of the myths that we're told? Because I thought that goat was a ruminant animal. Am I does anybody know? Is goat a ruminant animal? Because the community is goat a ruminant. So the community seems to, yeah, goat's a ruminant. The community of carnivores seems to be very invested in it's misspelled. What? So can you help us out? What's misspelled? No, I'm not sure what you're talking about. So let's see. Go. What can you help us out, Bard? What's misspelled? But yeah. So and from what I understand, goat is a really oh, ghee or similar making fat. But no, that doesn't make sense either. Anyway, Sing it says, so interesting. That was enlightening. Really helped focus the difference between hunger and cravings. That was good stuff. Well, thank you very much. Sing it. I appreciate that. It looks like we are at the end of our video. Oh, he means gout, not goat. Thank you, Lolo Carter. Gout. Okay, so struggling with arthritis or gout or similar, making fat burning seemingly far fetched. Much We're much better at adjusting calorie absorption according to needs with fats than with sugars. We're much better at adjusting calorie absorption. Okay, so here's the thing. Yeah, of course, we're much better at adjusting calorie absorption. So calorie absorption isn't a thing. That's part of so Bart. So what I'm going to point out there is that our body doesn't understand calories. It understands energy, and then different energies. So some energy sources are necessary in small amounts, sugar, and then other energy sources are necessary in from our diet in large amounts, which is fat. So we do need to eat fat. That's a thing. And we need to eat protein. That's a thing. We don't ever need to eat carbohydrates. So this idea of calories doesn't translate to the human body because our body will do processes with sugar. Some of them are energy related, some of them are not, because sugar in the body does do other things. And our body will do processes with fat, which have to do with building the body, energizing the body, and creating things, and signaling things is the other thing. And I mean, geez, there's so many things that fat does in the body, and it's different. So, it's like for sure, um, gasoline is important and can move a car around. For sure, electricity is important and can move a car around, but the uses of gasoline in a house versus electricity in a house would be very different, right? Because there might be something that you could run with gasoline in a house, maybe a generator outside to produce electricity for the house, but you wouldn't just run a house with gasoline, right? So it's like, I think we need to allow ourselves to understand that our body, although there might be some small reasons that it would be fine for us to eat carbohydrates, in fact, what our body is looking for us to eat, as I said, that last point, our body's looking for us to eat mostly protein and fat. That's what it's looking for. Medicinally, once in a blue moon, eating some carbohydrates, so plants, basically, yes, my body can totally tolerate it for that medicinal purpose. And by the way, starvation is a medicinal purpose. If I'm starving, yes, my body's going to absolutely happily eat the plants. That's medicinal, right? If I'm trying to counter the poison of something else with this other plant, my body will tolerate that. That's medicinal. But we need to be careful. This calorie idea that's another way that they get us off track. And they allow us, we can allow ourselves to be sidetracked in our goals. So interesting. That was enlightening. Really helped focus the difference between hunger and cravings. That was good stuff. You are so kind to say that. Thank you. And thank you. So I'm going to jump out, Wellness Warrior. And I have to get myself to my activities because I definitely want to longboard today. And so that means that I have to do my congratulations singing. I'm going to pause and say that congratulations. Ate okay last week while off, but was too tired to exercise. The fact that you ate properly is the most important part of that story, because eating is the 80%. That we have to keep that in mind. So you ate properly, your body is still able to get in there and rebuild you, even if you were too tired to exercise. And I know that you mentioned to me that exercise, especially the jumping, is really good for lipedema. So I'm not saying I don't want you to do that, but exercising and eating crap, or eating properly and not exercising, we know what the right answer is. And you chose the right answer. So congratulations on that. I really appreciate you sharing that with the squad. The community, I should say, because it helps people to understand that if you have to pick one, pick the right one. Next Monday, I'm going to be live at 11:20. If you want to get your cravings under control, you can go down below and click the link. The video's there right now. Click that link and hop over to the other video. Have a good rest of your day, guys.